All right, welcome in, everyone. Kicking off another deep dive here.
Absolutely.
And today we're looking at something I think really transformative,
Yeah.
mobile first elections.
Interesting stuff.
Picture this, like
Yeah.
the one piece of technology that like almost everyone has in their pocket, their smartphone,
Right.
could actually revolutionize how we all participate in democracy
Yeah.
across the entire world.
Big implications.
Yeah. So let's explore how that could actually work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've been looking at a ton of material that really digs into this whole idea of mobile first elections.
Yeah.
And, especially kind of the crucial role that UX design plays in all this.
Yeah.
It's not just about like, throwing a ballot on a screen.
Right.
It's about making the whole experience of voting on your phone
Yeah.
actually work for everyone.
Okay.
So that's kind of the thing we're going to untangle.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit
Yeah.
because mobile first elections. When I first heard that phrase, I was like,
Yeah.
what exactly are we talking about here?
Right.
At its heart, it seems like using the
Yeah.
mobile technology that we're all familiar with
Yeah.
to simplify voting.
Right.
Providing information about the elections,
Right.
boosting civic engagement. Like
Absolutely.
it sounds pretty good on the surface, but what are we really
Yeah.
looking at here?
Yeah, I think the goal today is like, let's get a grip on what this actually means.
Yeah.
Right? So like understanding the potential of it, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
why UX design is so important. And then what are the real challenges we've got to overcome?
Okay.
Because it's not all rosy.
Sure.
But it's definitely happening.
It's definitely happening. So I think one of the things
Yeah.
that struck me was just the sheer
The scale.
scale of mobile technology in general.
Oh my God, it's huge.
Yeah. Like when you look at the numbers, it's just like,
Mind-boggling. Yeah, by last year,
yeah.
2023, there were something like 6.8 billion mobile subscribers in the world,
Oh, wow.
which is that's a huge chunk of the population.
And over 70% of people globally have a smartphone.
Right. That's the key, right? They have a
Yeah.
smartphone,
Right.
that's like the foundation for all this.
Right. And that's only going to go up.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And so when we look at, it's not just about having the device, it's about
Right.
like, how are we actually using it?
What are the examples of this?
Right. So when we look at the world, I mean,
Yeah.
some of these examples of how mobile is already changing elections, like
Yeah.
it's already happening. And in our research, we found some really interesting
Some interesting case studies, yeah?
case studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, what were some of the ones that stuck out to you?
like India in 2021, right?
Okay.
They rolled out mobile applications for e-voting.
Which is huge. And what's interesting is that it enabled something like 20% of rural voters
Wow.
to actually participate in the elections,
Wow.
which is like, that's a massive impact, especially when you think about places where
Wait.
traditional infrastructure might be lacking.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a tangible
real world impact.
difference. And we also looked at Kenya in 2017,
Yeah. Right.
and it wasn't mobile voting directly,
Right.
but they used these mobile platforms to like guide voters.
Right. To give them information.
Yeah, to give them information about the candidates.
Where to go.
Yeah, where to vote. Like,
yeah, it's all about empowerment, right?
Yeah.
Like you're empowering the voter with the knowledge that they need
Yeah.
to actually participate effectively.
to make an informed decision.
Exactly.
And then when we think about like, oh, okay, so we can,
Yeah.
help people vote, we can help people get informed.
Yeah.
But what about like the bigger picture of voter turnout? Right, the big one, yeah.
We looked at Estonia, and that was a really compelling case study.
Oh yeah, they've been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Their mobile e-voting system's been in place
Yeah.
for a while. And in 2019, like their elections in 2019, they saw a record 90% voter turnout,
90%.
which is just, it's incredible. And a huge portion of those votes were cast via smartphones.
Wow.
So it really shows you what's possible
Right.
when mobile voting is done well.
Yeah, 90%.
It's huge.
That's insane. Like I can't even imagine that.
It's hard to fathom.
Yeah. And it highlights how it can break down those geographical barriers,
Right.
those logistical hurdles, especially in places where
Totally.
it's hard to set up polling stations everywhere. Like
Yeah.
mobile can really kind of come in and
Level the playing field in a lot of ways.
level the playing field. But one thing that our source material kept
Kept coming back to.
coming back to was this whole UX design. And for someone like me who's not a tech expert.
Yeah.
Why is that so critical when we're talking about mobile elections?
Well, I think, you can think of UX design as like basically making technology
Yeah.
work for people, right? It's
Okay.
like in the context of mobile elections, it's about making sure that these platforms
Mm.
aren't just like, they work,
Right?
but that they're easy to use, that they're intuitive, that everyone can access them,
Right.
regardless of like how tech savvy they are
Yeah.
or what their circumstances are.
Okay, that makes total sense. So it's not just about having the technology available. It's
Wow.
about designing it so that people can actually use it
Yeah, and that they want to use it.
and want to use it.
It's got to be engaging.
Yeah, so our research highlighted some really specific ways that UX contributes to that.
Oh yeah,
So
there's
let's dive into some of those.
absolutely. Let's get into the weeds a bit.
Let's get into the weeds.
Yeah, so like one key element is just creating simplified interfaces. Right.
Oh.
Like imagine trying to navigate
Right.
a complex ballot or a voting process
Yeah.
on a tiny little phone screen.
Right.
And you're maybe not super familiar with
Right.
technology or whatever, like it can get really confusing really fast.
Yeah.
But effective UX can streamline all that, right?
Okay.
So, you could have something as simple as like a really obvious one-tap vote button,
Okay.
something that just guides you through the process without
Okay.
overwhelming you.
I mean, it sounds almost obvious when you say it like that, but I can totally see how a poorly designed interface would just be
Oh, absolutely. A deal breaker.
a deal breaker. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't trust
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, come
Okay.
on.
So what other things did our research kind of point out? Well, another really crucial thing, especially when you think about reaching like a global audience,
Yeah.
is low bandwidth optimization,
Okay.
right? Because in a lot of parts of the world, internet connections
Correct.
aren't always super fast
Right.
or reliable.
Right.
So UX design really focuses on creating apps that are like data light,
Okay.
so they can function even on slower connections.
Okay.
And like we saw a really great example of this in Nigeria's 2022 elections,
Okay.
where they actually implemented this approach and they saw a 15% increase in voter participation.
15%.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable.
That's huge.
Yeah, just from making the app
right.
like work well on slower connections.
That's a really good example of like how these seemingly small design
Absolutely.
considerations can have like real world consequences.
Yeah, it's not just about aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's about function and it's about accessibility.
Yeah, and one thing I remember from the sources too is like language,
Oh yeah, language is huge.
Yeah. Providing multilingual support.
That's essential for inclusivity, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to make sure that people can interact with these platforms in their own language.
Right.
And UX design can really help with that by integrating interfaces that support multiple languages.
Okay.
And like in South Africa, in their 2019 elections, they introduced a multilingual mobile app.
Okay.
And they actually saw an improvement in voter engagement just from that.
It makes sense. Like if I can't understand the language, like
You're not going to trust it.
I'm not going to trust it. I don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
I'm out.
And it's interesting because when people can interact with the voting process in their own language,
Yeah.
it builds trust, it encourages participation, and it makes them feel like,
Right.
their vote actually matters.
Like they're actually being considered.
Exactly.
And then of course we can't forget about accessibility for individuals with disabilities.
Absolutely. That's paramount.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves to be able to vote.
Yeah.
Regardless of their abilities.
Right.
And good UX design, it takes that into account.
All right.
So it incorporates things like voice commands, options for larger text sizes.
Okay.
And like we actually saw that in the 2020 US elections.
Okay.
These features actually contributed to a 10% increase in access,
Wow.
it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And it shows you that these things aren't just like add-ons.
Right.
They're fundamental to making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to vote.
It really comes back to this idea of bridging the digital divide, right? Like
Right.
by really focusing on that usability.
Right.
UX design could actually make mobile elections a tool for greater inclusion
Exactly.
rather than accidentally excluding people.
Yeah, it's about making sure that technology doesn't
Right.
create more barriers,
Right.
but actually breaks them down.
Absolutely. But as with any kind of major shift,
Yeah.
there are going to be some challenges.
Well, there are always challenges.
And we've got to acknowledge those.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest hurdles that you think
Yeah.
UX designers in this field of mobile elections are coming up against?
One of the big ones is just technological inequality, right?
Okay.
Like you said, smartphone ownership is widespread,
Hmm.
but a lot of users, especially in certain regions of Africa,
Okay.
are still using older devices, less powerful devices.
Okay.
And our research actually showed that something like 30% of voters in these areas might be using phones that are
Wow.
just not really compatible with
Right.
more advanced mobile election platforms.
So you could have like a really cutting edge,
Yeah.
feature-rich app,
Super slick,
but it's completely unusable on an older phone.
totally useless.
Yeah, okay. So what other kind of barriers did the sources point out?
Or another big one is just limited internet access,
Okay.
right? Especially in rural areas.
Yeah.
And like the situation in Gambia really highlights this, where a whopping 40% of voters don't have reliable mobile data access.
40%.
Yeah, which is a huge, huge number.
So you might have the device,
Might have the phone.
but you literally can't use it to vote.
Can't connect.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's a fundamental challenge.
It is.
And then I imagine security is a big one when we're talking about something as important as
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
The
that's- yeah.
security is paramount,
yeah.
right? Because these systems
Well,
are
right.
potentially vulnerable to cyber threats.
Right.
And any perceived vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
can really damage public trust.
Right.
And we actually saw this happen in Brazil in 2018,
Okay.
where there were some concerns about hacking with a mobile voting app,
Uh-huh.
and it led to a lot of skepticism from the public.
Right. And if people don't trust the system,
They're not going to use it,
they're not going to use it.
no matter how convenient it might be.
Makes sense.
So, yes, security is a huge deal.
Absolutely. And then the last thing that our research touched on was something that honestly I hadn't
Okay.
really considered, which is user education.
Digital literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, because not everyone is equally comfortable with technology,
Right.
right? And that can be especially true for like older generation.
Older folks.
You know, and if we're asking people to adopt these new digital voting methods, they've got to have a certain level of familiarity, confidence, and that can be a real barrier for some.
Yeah, and that's where UX can really come in and help.
So how can UX help overcome some of these hurdles?
I'm glad you asked it.
Because these are some big hurdles.
They're big challenges, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the key strategies is designing what we call lightweight applications,
Okay.
right? So really focusing on efficiency,
Okay.
minimizing data usage,
Mm.
Aiming for those apps that are
Right.
under 5 megabytes
Okay.
so that they can run on even older devices and function well
Okay.
even with slower internet connections.
So it's a really practical, impactful solution.
It is.
Yeah. What about security?
So security, right?
Yeah.
Big concern.
Yeah.
But the good news is that UX can really help with this too.
Okay.
Right? So you can integrate robust security measures
Okay.
through thoughtful design.
Okay.
So this could include things like, really strong encryption,
Uh-huh.
two-factor authentication, which
What's
is
that?
basically it's like having 2 keys to unlock your vote.
Okay.
So you might have your password,
Right.
and then you might also get like a temporary code sent to your phone.
Okay.
It's like a double layer of security.
Okay. So it makes it harder for.
Yeah, much harder for unauthorized access.
Okay.
And our research actually showed that Japan did a really great job of implementing this
Okay.
in their 2021 elections.
Okay.
So, by making security both effective and easy to understand,
Yeah.
you can actually build public confidence.
That's so important, that transparency.
Totally.
Yeah. And then
Right, you got to be able to,
Yeah.
you got to see how it works
Yeah.
and believe that it's working.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then what about those folks who might be a little bit less comfortable
Right.
with technology? What can we do for them?
Yeah, well, that's where educational campaigns come in.
Okay.
And UX designers can play a really big role in this,
Okay.
right? So they can create things like, clear and concise tutorial videos,
Okay.
interactive guides that walk voters through the whole mobile voting process,
Right.
like step by step.
Okay.
And we saw a great example of this in the 2022 Philippines elections,
Okay.
where they actually attributed a 12% increase in voter participation
Wow.
to UX-driven voter education.
So just making it
Yeah.
easy for people to understand how to do it.
Easy to follow instructions. Yeah. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like,
Right.
it's not just about the technology, it's about the people
It's all about the people in the end.
and how they're actually interacting with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think
So it's a people-centric approach
Yeah.
to technology.
and the last point here just to touch on that diversity.
Oh, yeah, the cultural and linguistic diversity.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, because we're not just talking about...
We're talking about the whole world here.
Yeah.
This isn't just for one country.
Yeah, this isn't just like a U.S.-centric or...
Right. It's got to work for everyone.
Yeah, so how can UX address that kind of... that landscape?
Yeah, well, localization and cultural adaptation are really key.
Okay.
Right. So it's not just about translating text. It's about understanding the cultural nuances.
Right.
Incorporating symbols and visual cues that are relevant to that specific culture.
Okay.
And making sure that the overall design resonates with the target audience.
So you're not just like taking an app and just translating the text.
No, you got to go deeper than that.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to actually understand the people that you're...
The people you're designing for.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And that can really improve, I imagine, voter confidence and engagement.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if it feels familiar and trustworthy.
Yeah, it makes people feel like they're part of the process.
And their vote matters.
Exactly.
So I think what's becoming really clear here is that UX design isn't just about aesthetics. It's about shaping whether or not these mobile elections can actually work and serve this diverse population.
That's the key.
So our research highlighted some real-world successes.
Yeah, let's look at the good stuff.
And also offered some interesting insights into the future.
Yeah, where this is all going.
So what are some of those positive examples that stood out to you?
Well, we talk about Estonia, right?
Yeah.
Back in 2019, they had their highly optimized mobile voting system, which has really become a model for a lot of other countries. Right. And their user-centric design was clearly a huge part of that success.
Right.
You know, they had high voter turnout.
Right.
Things ran smoothly. People felt confident in the system.
And then there's the sheer scale of what we saw in India in 2021.
Yeah, India's a great example.
Where they reached 100 million rural voters.
100 million.
With these UX-designed mobile platforms.
Yeah, it's just incredible to think about the reach that mobile technology can have.
Yeah. And I think
when it's done well,
it really speaks to the potential for reaching those underserved communities.
And the UNDP, right?
Yeah.
The United Nations Development Program.
Yeah.
They're actually predicting like a 40% increase in global voter participation by 2030.
By 2030.
Yeah.
Wow.
Specifically due to the rise of these mobile-first elections.
That's a game changer.
It is.
40%.
That's transformative.
Wow. That's incredible.
So, you know, it's really exciting to think about the possibilities.
Yeah. And I think our research also touched on the potential of some even newer...
Oh, yeah, the emerging technologies.
Emerging technologies.
So things like 5G, you know, which is going to offer like even faster, more reliable connections. And then you've got augmented reality coming into the picture.
Yeah.
And that could really change the game for mobile voting accessibility.
So, I mean, I can imagine like an AR interface that guides voters through the process.
Absolutely. It makes it even more intuitive and engaging.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So as we kind of bring this deep dive to a close, it seems like it's pretty undeniable that mobile-first elections have
huge potential.
Huge potential for making voting more accessible.
Democratizing access to democracy.
Across the world, but it's not just about the technology itself.
It's not. Technology is the enabler.
Right.
But UX design is really the key to unlocking that potential. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this.
And it's not just like a helpful add-on.
No, it's essential.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crucial.
It's crucial.
Because we're talking about navigating all these complexities, right? Yeah. Technological disparities, connectivity issues, security threats, digital literacy, all these things.
Yeah.
And if we don't have thoughtful design that actually considers the needs of all these different users around the world, then mobile elections could actually make things worse.
They can actually make things worse.
Instead of better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really important point to underscore.
That is a really, really important point to underscore.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left kind of contemplating like, where does this go from here, you know?
The future?
The future, yeah. And given how quickly mobile technology is evolving.
It's moving fast.
Yeah. And UX design is changing so rapidly as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what could we see in the next decade that we haven't even thought of yet?
What are the unexpected things that could happen?
Yeah. And going beyond just
beyond just casting a ballot.
Casting a ballot.
Right.
Like, could we see mobile technology completely reshaping
Yeah.
voter verification processes,
Right.
campaign strategies.
Holy.
Could we actually foster civic engagement
Yeah.
in really meaningful ways
Between elections.
between elections? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because the potential here extends way beyond
Yeah.
just, marking a digital ballot.
Right.
You can have things like
Yeah.
secure digital identities for voting,
Okay.
personalized information campaigns
Yeah.
that are tailored
Right.
to each individual voter's needs and interests. Platforms for ongoing civic dialogue and feedback.
Yeah.
It's really kind of mind-blowing
Yeah.
to think about what might be possible.
It's a lot to consider.
It is.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you, the listener,
Yeah.
a little bit more of an understanding.
Yeah, just a glimpse into
Yeah.
what's happening.
Of what's possible
Yeah.
and what we need to be thinking about.
And the things to watch out for.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener,
Yeah.
we hope this has been
Illuminating.
Yeah. A little bit.
A little bit
Provocative, maybe.
provocative, thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And maybe sparked some ideas for you
Absolutely.
to explore further.
Yeah. Go out there and
Yeah.
do some digging.
Do some digging. So until our next deep dive,
Yeah.
take care.
Be well.
We'll see you soon.
See you later.